Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. I put out a community post on my community tab asking you guys if you would like me to post the full tutorial of the dress or just how to achieve the winged collared neckline, and I realized that so many of you wanted the full tutorial including the peplum, even though I did not ask about the peplum. Unfortunately, the person I made this dress for did not want the peplum. So here's the deal. I am going to be recreating the full dress for myself at a later date, but I decided to just drop this tutorial for now because I don't know the particular time I'm going to post that video. So let's get into the tutorial proper. The first step is to go ahead and fold your paper into 2 equal halves. This is very important for the drafting of this pattern. After that, I'm going to determine the extension of the winged collar. For me, I want to use 6 inches. I'm going to mark that and connect. Note, you can use 4, you can use 5, you can use 6. I think anything less than 4 will not really give like that. Do you get? I am going to mark the bust point, which is 10.5 inches. I'll mark that twice just to get a straight line, and I'll connect the point. Then I'll label that part BP as in bust point. I'll proceed to mark the waistline, which is 16.5. Then add half inch joining allowance to that, which implies that I marked 17 inches. So I'll proceed to mark that again to get a straight line 16.5 and 17 inches. Then I'll proceed to connect the point and label the waistline WL. For now, I'll be using a neck width of 3.5 inches. I'll proceed to mark that. Her shoulder width is 16 inches. 16 divided by 2 gives me 8 inches, which is what I went ahead to mark. Remember, our shoulder is not straight, so I'm going to go down from the shoulder width area by 1.5, and that is going to serve as my shoulder slope. I'll proceed to connect from that point to the neck width area. The next step is to calculate your armhole line, which is gotten by dividing your bust circumference by 6 plus 1.5 inch, and for this person I got 8.25, which is what I went ahead to mark, as you can see. Then I'll proceed to rule that into a straight line. Now I'll note what I marked on my shoulder width area, which is 8 inches. I'll mark the same thing on this chest line or armhole line, and I'll proceed to connect that into a straight line. We are about to form our armhole curve, and in order to do that, I will divide what I have from here to this point into 2. That is 8.25 divided by 2 gives 4.1, and that's what I marked. On that line, I'm going to go in by 0.5 inch and connect as shown. On the chest line, divide your bust circumference by 4 and mark whatever you get at that point. Then proceed to fully form your armhole curve just as shown. The next step involves adding 0.5 inch seam allowance at the armhole area as well as the shoulder area. Now I'm going to determine the particular neck width I'll be working with, and I want to use 4 inches, and that's what I marked. I'll mark 4 inches at the top as well and connect the point. Now I'll proceed to add 1.5 inch seam allowance. Now proceed to divide your waist circumference by 4 and mark what you get. Mark the same thing on the waistline area, connect the point and connect with your ruler as shown. I'll proceed to add 1 extra inch for that and 1.5 inch seam allowance, and I will proceed to connect as shown. Now I'm going to go ahead to mark the bust dart. To get your bust dart accurately, you need to know your shoulder to waist for your front and shoulder to waist for your back, because they are not equal. To take that measurement accurately, all you need to do is to tie a rope on your waistline, then take your shoulder to waist measurement for your front and shoulder to waist measurement for your back. You should get the accurate measurement. For this person, you can see that the difference between her front shoulder to waist and back shoulder to waist is 1.5 inches. So what I'll do now is to come down from that bust point line and mark 1.5 inches. After taking the waist dart, we'll come back to complete the bust dart. In order to mark the dart, divide your nipple to nipple measurement by 2. Hers is 8. 8 divided by 2 gives 4, which is what I marked and connected. I'll come down from the bust by 1 inch and I'll take 0.5 inch on both sides of this line and I'll connect to the point above. After connecting, I'll proceed to mark 1 inch away from the bust point and use my ruler to connect just as shown, and that is your bust dart. Simple and short. Now I'll proceed to quickly cut out. After cutting out, go ahead to open it up just like I'm showing you, and you're going to decide how open you want this your top at this point. For me, I went ahead to rule out 8.5 inches at that point, but we're not going to cut it out, just for you to note. And I'm going to connect from this point to the top and cut it out basically. Now it is time to draft out the back pattern, and what I will do is to first mark out my zipper allowance, which will be 1 inch. I'll proceed to connect the points and label the zipper allowance. I'll mark out my starting line and rule a straight line. Now to draft the back pattern, all I need to do is to take 3.5 inch neckline and the 8 inch shoulder width, come down by 1.5 inches just like we did for the front pattern, connect, and then mark 1.5 inches for the back neck depth and connect the point. The next step is to mark the bust point, which is 10.5 inches, then the waistline, back waistline, which is 15 inches, then half inch allowance. Okay, I'll proceed to mark them again so I can connect them into a straight line, and I'll do just that. Now let's adjust the neckline, the neck width to 4 inches just like we did for the front. So I'm going to mark 4 inches and connect that to form the neck line. Okay, so just to make sure that everything is equal with the front part. From our calculations in front, the armhole line is 8.25, so I'm going to mark that 8.25 and rule that into a straight line. Then proceed to mark the same 8 inches that I marked on my shoulder width area. I'll mark that on this line and connect that into a straight line. Then I'll divide that 8.25 into 2 equal halves, which will give me about 4.1. I'll mark that. On this line, I'll divide my bust circumference by 4 and mark what I have at that point and connect. This is just the same thing we did in front, just that now the back curve is different from the front curve. I'll go ahead to add 0.5 inch seam allowance round the pattern. One thing I realized later on while sewing is the fact that I shouldn't have added 0.5 inch seam allowance at the neckline, because there was no seam allowance for the neckline for the front, so I should have just left it the way it was. Okay, so just do the same thing, don't add any allowance at the neckline. Now add your 1.5 inch seam allowance just like we did in front. Proceed to mark your dart just like I explained. Mark your nipple to nipple divided by 2, connect the point, and then take half inch on both sides of the line, connect. Then proceed to take your waist measurement divided by 4 on the line, then add 1 inch for that and 1.5 inch seam allowance and connect the points, and you are done with your back pattern. In order to get rid of zipper bulge, go up from this part by 0.5 inches and connect to the side seam. Then go in from this part by 0.5 inch and connect to the top. So we're going to cut all of that out, and I'd like you to pay attention to how I'm cutting that. This is going to just help you get rid of zipper bulge. Okay, because I was trying not to make this video too long, I decided to draft my sleeve pattern off camera. If you really want me to post how to draft a perfect sleeve, please let me know in the comments. Okay, so I was trying to check out the pattern with the sleeve to ensure that it matches perfectly. The next step is to proceed to extend all the lines so that you can input your dart at the other part, because we'll be transferring the dart. So to make things easy for us, I'll just go ahead to quickly transfer everything to the other side as well. Now I have gone ahead to cut this out on fabric. I've also cut out a facing for the fabric. See, the short one is the facing, the long one is the main fabric. Now I'm going to quickly transfer my dart using pins as quickly as I can. What I just did was to pass the pins through the dart point, and I'll just use chalk to follow the point that the pins came out on the main fabric. The next step is to proceed to cut out your sleeve on fabric, okay? And you'll be needing 2 pieces. The next step is to cut out 2 pieces of your back pattern and also use pins to transfer the dart just like we did for the front. One thing I forgot to do, but I would not like you to forget, is the 0.5 inches that we took out from the zip allowance to get rid of zipper bulge. Do not forget to add it at the other side. You understand? So that your back will be balanced. Please listen attentively. This is going to make all the difference in this your winged collar. I brought out ST and I ironed it on top of the facing that I intend to use. I did not form just one layer. I ironed it twice. You know, like when you're padding your bustier, you know that vibe where you iron your ST twice or 4 times on your bustier. That is exactly what I did here. ST is perfect for this because it's a very soft interfacing that will feel like the main fabric on the client. You don't want something that will be feeling coarse or too thick. Okay, so the next step is to measure what I have here, which is 8.5. So in the last minute, I changed my mind and decided to use 9 inches. inches at this point. I was just contemplating 8.5, 8, 9 inches, you know, which one will give me the best outcome. So I used 9 inches at that point. Then I connected that into a straight line. Then I went ahead to place the lining and the main fabric, right sides facing each other, just like you see me doing. Next, I went ahead to use my pattern to notch the shoulder area, so it's easy for me to know that point. Okay, another very critical step is to go ahead and pin every angle together, because you don't want this thing moving around. This is a very critical step to get what you're doing accurately or perfectly. So pin every angle you can pin. Then proceed to mark out the seam allowance you intend to use for sewing or for stitching that part. So that's exactly what I was doing. So when you get to this point, just try and connect the straight line downwards. Guys, just make sure you have a little space in between, because you'll be stitching round like this in the form of a curve. Do you get? At the down part, don't forget sticking your darts as well. So here is what I have. I've gone ahead to stitch. Because of the way this allowance is very, very little, I still had to go and restitch it after cutting out what I wanted to do here. So I'm going to cut out now. At this point, you would have to be very careful. Just cut at the middle like this, okay, and you can now flip it to the right side. Okay, after flipping it, the thing was not resting well, so I had to notch properly. You have to notch and trim off every excess allowance. Okay, so because the allowance I left at that point was not too much, I still had to go back and restitch around that shoulder, everywhere. I had to restitch everything before I went ahead to iron it again to form this. So you have to reinforce the stitch, and like you can even stitch 3 times. Make sure you notch very well, and so that everything will just lay flat after ironing, just like you can see on your screen. Okay, so guys, now I've gone ahead to take in my darts. Okay, and here is what it's looking like. I also used hemming gum at that winged collared area whilst ironing it, so that it can lay very flat. Okay, I've also hemmed the base of this facing, okay, so that it looks really neat. The next step now is to cut out the skirt part. Fold your fabric into 2 and make sure what you have there is your hip circumference divided by 4 plus your seam allowance. From the calculation on the screen, what I got is 12.6 inches. As you can see, what I have there is about 13 inches, which is going to be perfect for what we want to cut out. Now for the back part should be about 1.5 inches wider than the front part, because that's the front pattern. And from the measurement I have there, you can see that what I have is about 15 inches or 16 inches, which is perfect for what we need it for. The next step is to mark 1.5 inches from beginning to the end. That is not our exact zipper allowance, but we'll adjust that later. So what I'm going to do now is to mark 1.5 inches from beginning to the end and connect with a straight ruler. Then carefully place the front pattern we cut out earlier on top of that line and arrange it properly. The next step is to mark out our starting line, and I'm going to mark 0.5 inches and connect the point. This is what we'll use to join the bodice, okay, this allowance. Now the next step is to mark out the hip point, which is 10 inches. I'll go ahead to mark that and connect into a straight line. The next step is to mark the length of the dress, and the first thing we need to do is to place our front shoulder to waist measurement, which is 16.5 on that line, and go ahead to mark the length of the dress. This will just make it very accurate. The length of the dress is 49 inches. Then I added 1 extra inch for hemming allowance. Then I went ahead to connect the point with a straight ruler. The next step is to divide your waist circumference by 4 and mark what you have at that point. Add 1 inch for that and 1.5 inches of seam allowance. Divide your hip circumference by 4 as well. Mark it, add 1.5 inch seam allowance. Use your curved ruler, the straightest part of your curved ruler, to connect the point. Now on the dress length line, I'm going to go ahead to mark my hip circumference divided by 4. The hip circumference is 44.5 divided by 4 gives about 11.1, and that's what I'm going to place at that point with no allowance at all. And I'll connect the point, and yeah, at this point I'm going to go down by 5 inches and draw that into a straight line. Then on the waistline, I'm going to mark 1/2 inch so that it matches with the bodice. You see, what we have there is 1/2 inch, so I'm going to mark 1/2 inch at that point. Then since our zipper allowance is 1 inch, I'm going to add 0.5 inch to that to make space for the bum bum and mark that. Then connect the point. On this line, I'm going to mark 1 inch. I had to reconfirm to be sure that I actually marked 1 inch. Then connect. Then that 1 inch, I'm going to mark it from beginning to the end and connect as shown. After connecting, I'm going to go ahead to cut out just as I'm showing you guys. Then at this point, you need to note that the 0.5 inch that we took out at the zip allowance to get rid of zipper bulge, do not forget to add it at the other side. I am going to go ahead to mark my dart, okay? I won't be wasting so much time explaining that because I've explained how to take your dart in a lot of videos and even at the beginning of this video. Okay, for the front pattern, come down from this point by 1/2 inch and connect to the side seam, then cut out. That will just help us get rid of excess and give a better fit. I would also go ahead to mark my dart for the back pattern, and yeah, that's something you already know how to do. After marking the dart, I'll go ahead to take in the dart for both the front pattern and the back pattern, and here is what I have after taking in my dart for the front pattern. I'm now going to attach the front skirt pattern to the front bodice. Okay, I'm going to pin down the dart area so that it matches perfectly when we head to our sewing machine to stitch it down, because you don't want to be that person that has mismatched darts. Okay, so here's what it looks like. I would also go ahead to pin down that of the back pattern as well and go ahead to stitch them down using 0.5 inch seam allowance. I am going to proceed to cut out a facing for the back neckline, and this is just how I cut it out. No too much stress. I'm going to place them right sides facing each other, and I'm going to pin them down and head over to my sewing machine to stitch. After stitching, I would also top stitch before I come back. I would also hem the base of the facing so that it looks really neat. Place the back part of the dress right sides facing each other, then mark your 1 inch zipper allowance from beginning to the end. Head over to your sewing machine and stitch down that part. Note where you want your slit to start from and mark it. After that, then proceed to iron your seams open. When you are done stitching, I will loosen to where I want my zipper to stop, then back stitch and go ahead to fix the zipper. The next step is to go ahead to join the shoulders and also join the side seam area with our 1.5 inch seam allowance. After marking my allowance, I'll head over to the sewing machine to stitch down the allowance, after which I would go ahead to fix my sleeve. After fixing my sleeve, I'll go ahead to hem the base of the dress. I would also hem the sleeve, then go ahead to attach the feathers. The feathers I got was not enough. We just managed it. We just used it scantily to, I used gum to fix my feathers. And here is the outcome of the dress. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye.